All right.
Each of you are going to testify.
Thank you.
You're up, doctor.
Thank you so much.
Who's that guy next to you?
This is Ray.
Hey,
Thank
Ray.
you, everyone, for entertaining Ray. My name is Elena Shih, and I'm an assistant professor of American Studies at Brown University, where I also lead a human trafficking research cluster through the Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice. I'm considered a global expert on migration, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and sex work. And I'm a former researcher with the United Nations Interagency Project to Combat Trafficking in China and a current member of the Rhode Island Advisory Council to the United States Commission on Civil Rights. But I recognize it's late, so I want to tell you an entertaining story. About a month ago, Cindy McCain was traveling through Phoenix's Sky Harbor Airport, and she believes she witnessed an act of human trafficking and quickly notified law enforcement, who detained the passengers in question. Recalling the events on a radio show, she said, I quote, "I spotted it looked odd, a woman of a different ethnicity than her child, this little toddler she had. Something didn't click with me. I tell people to trust their gut. I went over to the police and told them what I thought. They went over, questioned her, and by God, she was trafficking that kid," end quote. McCain further tweeted about this incident to widespread acclaim, espousing a new belief in civilian vigilance to stop sex trafficking. And throughout the country and in our state, publicly funded human trafficking awareness trainings embolden everyday people like you and me and Ray later to call the police when they believe they've seen a sex trafficking crime. Right here in Providence, Rhode Island, a 2016 crackdown on Asian massage parlors was widely touted in the news media as rescuing victims of sex trafficking, but in our research, we learned that not a single worker was offered a T visa, the amnesty visa for victims of trafficking, and instead, all who were undocumented Korean workers were deported. When I teach about trafficking, we trace this moral panic against trafficking to the year 2000 with the passing of the United Nations Palermo Protocol and the subsequent United States Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Now, 2 decades in 2019, research has reported that time and time again, we must evaluate the harms and so-called unintended consequences that anti-trafficking policies have enacted on the communities that they intend to serve. And I'll pause to say that advocates argue that we can't even call these unintended consequences anymore, but that racialized policing is exactly what anti-trafficking laws hope to achieve. And that's why 5354 is so important, because so much of the fight to stop sex trafficking is morally as opposed to empirically guided work. And what do I mean by this? Rather than ask the people who are directly affected by and engaged with the sex trade what they think and what might help them, policing prostitution satisfies the emotional needs of the people doing the rescuing. And that brings me back to Cindy McCain. After police investigated the so-called case of trafficking that McCain had reported, they discovered it was not sex trafficking at all, but rather just a mixed-race family traveling together. So this blatant act of racial profiling in the name of identifying and rescuing a victim of sex trafficking has really become endemic to the policing of prostitution, as Representative Williams has said. So we stand before you with the audacity to advocate for what sex workers want, because we have actually asked them. In 2015, the American Sociological Association awarded a Community Action Research Initiative grant of $3,000 to Bella Robinson and myself. The funding supported a research study to understand the effects of policing for sex workers in Rhode Island. And as others will testify, Rhode Island is such a unique and important case because of the decriminalization of indoor prostitution prior to 2009. Our 2016 survey had 62 respondents, all cis women sex workers, and it revealed shocking evidence of the negative impacts of surveillance and policing on people involved in the sex trade. And this is actually an umbrella category that includes everyone from victims of sex trafficking on one side to consensual workers on the other, but also a wide swath of immigrants, low-income people, trans and gender nonconforming people, and people of color who have become ensnared in the web to stop human trafficking. People arrested for prostitution were less likely to trust medical professionals in the ER and reported less likelihood of receiving access to homeless shelters. Over 72% of people we surveyed said if they were a victim of rape or sexual assault on the job, that they would be too scared to report this for fear of being arrested, fear that the police wouldn't take them seriously, or fear of drawing attention to themselves. 90% of people we surveyed said that they would not consider themselves victims of human trafficking, though nearly all agreed that they face precarious economic and housing situations. A study in Rhode Island thus would be so appropriate, as extensive research globally has already detailed the intense fear and humiliation experienced by workers during undercover raid and rescue operations. In our last open-ended survey question, we asked respondents if there was anything else they'd like lawmakers and policymakers to know. One respondent wrote, quote, "Don't allow officers to have sex with sex workers and arrest them. That is rape. Allow sex workers to report being rape. Allow medical professionals to treat sex workers who are attacked without the pressure to report them to the police. Arrest and convict serial sex worker rapists without penalizing the sex workers," end quote. These comments point to harrowing experiences of living and working in the sex trade, but it is important to note that these experiences are not a part of sex work, but they are the byproducts of what happened when prostitution is policed. We urge you to consider supporting this study that would value the needs and perspectives of those most affected simply by asking them what helps, but ultimately, and more importantly, what hurts. Thank you.
Any questions for the doctor? Yes, Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Because Rhode Island is so unique in that we had indoor prostitution legal before 2009 and then illegal after, have there been any studies that have data in terms of STD transmission, reduction or increase of rapes since 2009, increase or decrease of human trafficking since 2009? It just seems there would be a bevy of data out there,
Yeah,
which I'm just
absolutely.
curious if academics like yourself have parsed
Yes.
through.
So we have an economist who wrote one of the earliest papers looking at the data, Scott Cunningham, who's going to come and testify later. And then a subsequent research study we did on public health has some of that data, and we're going to have some people speak
Before
to
we're
that
done,
as
we'll
well.
answer your questions.
We'll wait. Thank you.